following podcast may contain some adult language. You've been warned.
Those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen.
Welcome to Finding the Narrative, a Genesys RPG podcast. This is a show dedicated to the Genesys role-playing system from Fantasy Flight Games, a show in which we, your hosts, discuss all things Genesys from both a player's and a GM's perspective. I am Tony Fanning, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Chris Holmes. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm doing great, other than the fact that I haven't gamed since we've talked last, which kind of sucks because I normally have a few sessions a week that I get to do, but I was sick yesterday. Couldn't play Pathfinder. Sorry, guys. Appreciate you guys understanding. And then I think something came up Thursday night, so we didn't do We didn't do Star Wars. It's the Beyond the Rim, and then Wednesday,
my Star Wars game. Yeah,
your Star Wars
I had
game.
To cancel because of last minute. Yeah. Yep. Same thing. I didn't get much of gaming in myself. I just had last night the old Pillage people, the Grognard group. We got together, and we played 5th level Pathfinder New Adventure. My buddy's running,
Cool.
And that was fun.
Yeah, anytime you can game and have fun, that's what it's all about.
That's right. Oh, and seeing the same friends I've had for 30 years, that helps.
Dude, I'm jealous. And I know that I'm still in contact with the guys I gamed with in high school. Long time ago. Scott, and all you guys, if you guys are out there listening to this, we're going to have to get together sometime and play.
So, do we have any news this week, buddy?
Dude, none. No news, man. I think we recorded Tuesday, about 5 days ago, and that book is still on the motherfucking boat. Yes,
I know.
I dropped the MF word, everybody. It's still on the boat, darn it.
Yeah, and if you're wondering out there, folks, why we're recording so close back to back, normally we put about 2 weeks between episodes. Tony's moving soon, so
yeah, man, that's good. So I probably won't put this out there for another week, but anyways,
yeah,
it is what it is. So yeah, no other news, no news.
Okay, well, that's okay. That's all right. We had a nice big listener feedback from one of our favorite listeners, Stefan Dragonspawn.
Oh yeah.
So it's a multi-part question here he had, and I had multiple answers for him. So let's start off. It says, "Hey there, boys. Listening to episode 4 concerning skills, and I was wondering if it would be appropriate to create a few new skills if the setting calls for it." And so I broke that up in my answers, and I'm going to break his question up and kind of answer them individually. Mm-hmm. So the first part, he says, the first one would be safe cracking. Skullduggery could cover most simpler locks, such as car doors, a home's front door, or a treasure chest. But for a more serious lock on a safe or a vault, that might call for its own skill set. I've worked for a safe manufacturing company and with a few locksmiths, and it's as much a science as an art. Okay. So my response to that, and Chris kind of agreed with me on all these, and you feel free to pipe in, buddy.
Sure, man.
As I said in the show, the big key when creating a skill, and that was episode 4 I'm talking about there, is to ask yourself how often that skill is coming into play. In his example, or in your example, I said, I know it seems to be a question of how different the tasks are, but really it boils down to the similarity and frequency. Opening a lock, no matter what the lock is similar, period.
Yep. Even if, like you said, Stefan, even if it's open up a car door or a uber tricky safe, it's the same thing.
Right. So if your game, and so when I say it's about frequency, if your game is about thieves and spies, and you want to emphasize those different uses of skullduggery. You want to break them down into separate categories and maybe have a safecracking skill so that you have a character that is a safecracker. If that's your setting, then yeah, it makes sense. But if you're just running a game where it may come up at any time, or maybe even just one scenario out of the 5 scenarios you're running for an entire campaign, leave it as skullduggery. It's a broad skill. Just make it more difficult. If it's a difficult lock to unlock, then make it difficult. Add in setback dice. Make it automatically upgraded. Yep. Whatever you got to do to make it seem like a very challenging encounter. You don't need to mess with the skills.
Absolutely.
And then what then differentiates a safecracker in that type of scenario, in that type of setting, from other rogue types is his choice in talents. That character can choose talents that make the safecracking portion of skullduggery more of his realm of expertise. And that's where you come into designing talents, which we haven't gotten into yet. But you can design talents or find talents for your game that will fine-tune certain skills and make characters grant them boost dice or give them the ability to remove boost dice based on situational stuff, that various uses of a skill.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he mentioned that he didn't even think of using the talents. I hadn't thought about it when I was first reading your response either, or even his question. But yeah, pulling in talents could definitely make that a better, a better thing to do.
Yep. And then the second question he had, the second one would be demolitions, an offshoot of mechanics or a specialty of the knowledge skill. Now, we covered this before in a previous episode, and
we even mentioned it last episode when we were talking about mechanics.
Yep. Yeah. Mechanics versus demolitions is one that comes up often. Mm-hmm. I like to keep it as a function of the mechanics skill and use the demolitionist spec from Edge of the Empire in the Hired Gun career book as a guideline for talents that will make the character more of an EOD specialist. But that being said, if I was running a military-style campaign where various different types of explosives and their handling become a prominent feature, I could see separating demolitions off into its own skill. Again, only if you were emphasizing that as part of your campaign and various different people had various different areas of expertise under that one skill.
Right.
Like mechanics. Mm-hmm. And then the final part is also in Genesis, do the knowledge skills stand on its own? Let me reread that. Also in Genesis, does the knowledge skill stand on its own to cover all stuff for character? If a character, I can't read today. If a character could have learned, but that doesn't fall into one of the other skills, or do you have to be specific about the kind of knowledge it covers, such as knowledge, ancient history, engineering, warfare, and so on. And so I kind of took a note from Chris and my previous conversation about knowledges back during our magic episode. Knowledge is designed to stay broad for most settings. It's just having a higher difficulty for rare and obscure tidbits is good enough. And that's, if you're running a Weird Wars setting, you don't need a tremendous amount of knowledge. If you're running a futuristic sci-fi campaign, maybe you want a couple. But however, in settings where some knowledge is forgotten, lost, or forbidden, and in settings where knowledge is sparsely dispersed among the populace, meaning most folks are illiterate peasants, spreading it off into 3 to 5 areas of knowledge is probably better. And also, like Chris and I have said during our magic episode, having separate skills for knowledge arcana, religion, and nature, and lore is our preferred method. So,
yeah, absolutely. Ditto. Ditto on all that. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Right. And that's just, 3 to 5 skills of knowledge. You can break it up. And it even suggests so in the book that that's the first place they suggest you make a skill change, if you're going to make any, is to maybe spread knowledge off into multiple knowledges.
Right. Yeah, and like Tony said, it kind of depends on your setting. And, something like a Cthulhu game, where there's a lot of investigation going on. Instead of just having everybody make perception rolls all the time, you could pull in some of those different skills, make them knowledge skills, and have different people in your group specialize in different investigative styles or specific knowledge skills for an investigative style game. Just spread that around so that everybody has something to do.
Yeah, just don't get too bad to where you got a skill bloat. That's always what you got to watch out for when you're creating skills for your system is skill bloat. You don't want so many skills that people don't have room to spend their XP or their character creation, beginning character creation points.
Yep. Because
you're just going to have a bunch of skills that people are untrained in. And then everyone's always rolling ability dice for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the session 0 thing where you want to talk to your players about and your GM or DM about what kind of campaign you're going to be running. That'll kind of let them know what kind of skills are going to be available, what might be more important than others.
So don't tell your players you're running an investigative campaign and then put them up against extraplanar monsters in the middle of it.
Sure, that's something like
conversation for another day.
Awesome.
Well, that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Stefan, thanks for the question. Anyone else, if you ever want to get a hold of us, of course, contact information is at the bottom of the show. But we really appreciate the feedback. I do want to shout out to Tyler at my local FLGS. He popped in one day while I was in there playing Star Wars Destiny and tapped me on the shoulder and said he's listened to every episode of the show, likes it, and thinks that we have great chemistry. I said, well, Chris and I aren't married, but thanks.
Though we will be rooming together at Con on the Cob.
So, yeah, it might be a conjugal relationship at that point, but we'll see. It all depends on how drunk I get.
All right, that just went on the internets.
I'm kidding. Come on.
I could edit that out. Nah. All right.
For the record, I am not going to have sexual relations with my friend.
I'll have to play that back for my wife. Just to let her know. So he promised, hon. He promised. No. All right. Now it's getting weird. This is the social encounter episode, though, right? So.
And I almost named it. Let's get socially awkward. But instead, what did I choose for the name of this episode?
Words can hurt too, man. And you know what? We're going to talk about how they can in our next session. In our next session. In our next section. Our next part.
Honestly, folks, we're just stumbling our way through this.
Dude, are we going? We're taking steps backwards or forwards? Nah, dude, we're going forward. We're fleeing forward. You always want to flee forward.
That's right.
Remember that. All right. All right. On to the next section. All right. We are back now. The Book of Genesis. This session, we are going to talk social skills. And then we're going to talk about social combat and run you through one in this section. So when we talk social skills, I'm looking at page 54 in the Book of Genesis here, where they start talking about social skills, and they're laid out just like we talked about last week. Not last week, but last episode. You know how they have the description, they have the should use this skill if, should not use this skill if. And the social skills we're going to be talking about are what, Tony?
Well, charm, coercion, deception, leadership, and negotiation, the big five.
That's right, the big five. And there is a really cool table on page 55. Right in kind of the sidebar there, table 1-3-2 interactions, where it gives you the acting skill, whatever social skill you're using, and its opposing skill or defensive skill. And we went over a couple of these last week, with cool and discipline and vigilance being the defensive skills for these. So charm, which goes off your presence, is opposed by cool, which is presence-based as well. What's the next one?
Coercion, which is based off your willpower, and it's opposed by discipline.
Yep. Then we've got deception, which is cunning-based, which is opposed by vigilance.
And then leadership, which is presence-based, and that is opposed by discipline. Again.
Yep. And then we have negotiation, which is opposed by, no shocker here, negotiation. So charm would be used for the if you wanted to convince somebody to do something for you, where you are flattering them, making, nice remarks to them and being charming effectively. If you're likable, you bring those qualities forward. Your character would be bringing those qualities forward.
Yep.
To do that.
And coercion is if you're trying to...
Kind of the opposite.
Yeah, you're big and scary and you're trying to make somebody do what you want.
That's right. You could put the beat down on them and threaten violence.
Yep. That
kind of stuff.
Yep. And that's your intimidation.
That's your intimidation. And of course, deception is just that. You want to fool somebody by lying to them. You're going to deceive them. You're going to tell a lie. Throw out half-truths, fast talk in that way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And leadership is more along the lines of you're trying to convince people to follow a sense of duty, that they are trying to accomplish a common goal through your leadership skill.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then negotiation, that would be used. You would want to use that if you are giving somebody something and getting something in return. And negotiating it's basically you're making a deal with them. You're not deceiving them. You're not being charming. You're basically offering something, giving them something, what they want, in order for you to get something in return.
Let's haggle.
That's right. Let's haggle.
So, yeah, that's pretty much our social skills in a nutshell. I mean, there's the what don't you use them for, and pretty much what you'd use each one individually for is what you wouldn't use the other ones for.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if I want to convince somebody, even though I may have a good presence, my character is good looking, as opposed to what I am in real life. If I start telling them a lie, I don't want to use. That's not using charm, even though my character is good looking and maybe not being all nice and stuff. No, I'm still deceiving them, telling a lie. So that would be deception instead of charm. So
right.
All right. So let me see. So then next, what we want to talk about. So those are the skills. What we want to talk about are now the social encounters. How are we using these skills in a social encounter when it comes down to it?
Yep. And that whole thing, social encounters or social combat, as they're called sometimes, starts on page 118, chapter 7. It talks about what is a social encounter, how it's structured, when and when not to run them, and what skills to use for what. Again, we've already kind of discussed that.
Yep. I liked what your buddy said, that it's basically round zero before combat. If it happens to degenerate into...
It usually does. It usually does in my group. Yeah. They usually walk into a social combat with weapons ready.
Yeah, that's round zero for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, what is a social encounter as far as what it entails?
Well, first off, it's less structured more than anything than a combat encounter. You're not necessarily going to have rounds of combat. You're not and you basically what it's going to do is it's going to be, you're wanting to get a group of people or somebody else to kind of do something for you or convince them to take another path or whatever. And it's more narrative, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and as a GM, what you're trying to do, and it explains this on page 119, that the first thing you want to do is when you structure your social encounter, the first thing you want to do is you want to determine what your goal is for that encounter. What you want the players to do, whether you're running that Cthulhu-esque investigation, whether you want them to go into a single crime scene and pick up a bunch of clues, that's one encounter, or maybe you want them to kind of do a montage of talking to people throughout town in multiple different locations. It's freeform like that. It doesn't have to be all one set location. It can be in multiple places. Just the common goal here, in this case, the Cthulhu-esque investigative game, is to get the clues you need to go to the next section of the adventure.
Right. Yeah, and they gave an example here. Anything from a simple goal to a more complex goal. Like a simple goal could be negotiating a price for some vehicle you're going to need, or transportation somewhere. To a very complex goal of getting two feuding crime families to talk to each other. And that's, Tony, that would be one of those examples where you would want to go to maybe various locations for one crime family, go to the other side of the crime family, but it's more of a narrative kind of feel. You're cutting between these different social scenes, gathering up successes and those things, and you want to set that. The next thing is to kind of set a start and an end to it. So at one point, you have to know as a GM when that goal is accomplished. You know what I mean? Especially in especially in that more complex example.
Exactly, and you can do so if you need it to be a little more structured, and you want to do so in rounds, so to speak. Because, and the reason for that, the reason why you want to maybe enter rounds into it, is because there are certain talents and archetype abilities that can be used once in an encounter, once per session, once a round, so on and so forth. So because those abilities are in your group, you may want to structure a round-by-round structure so that people can use round-by-round abilities or pass boost dice back and forth based on their advantages and threat, boost and setback dice. Those things, that's why you would choose a round-by-round structure. But certainly you want, if you had a complex goal and it was, let's say, getting two crime families to work together, you may want to do a string of encounters where each encounter is a small encounter so that you can highlight that character that has a once per encounter ability can use it in each one.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
And it also allows characters to roll to regain strain at the end of each encounter. So that because one thing that we haven't brought up yet is that how do you, track success in a social encounter? And the key way is dealing strain. What you would do is you would, for every success you would get in a success or in a social check, you're going to deal that much strain to your opponent. And once your opponent has reached their strain threshold, or other narrative ways, which we'll cover here in a second, then they become incapacitated, or basically they capitulate to what you're wanting.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I think when we're talking about capitulation, we're talking maybe partial. Getting them to kind of agree with you. You would set that threshold as maybe getting knocking down half their strain threshold. You would be just starting to get them to partially capitulate and do what you want them to do.
They'd be willing to compromise at that point.
Willing to compromise at that point. Yep. And that might be the goal, the end of the encounter right there, once they hit halfway. And again, those are things you'll need to have ready as a GM to go on. Maybe they hit it really quick and you wanted to stretch it out a little bit. Well, maybe you let them try and go for the full strain threshold at that point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So. And
then, of course, what would be, that's what success is, but what would be failure in a social encounter?
Well, failure in a social encounter would be you taking strain, you getting, you making the other party mad, and you're taking setback dice on your next checks, right?
Yep, and you get to the point where you're incapacitated from lack of strain, and again, that's not an incapacitated, you're dead or you're in a coma. That's you don't want to fight anymore. You don't want to argue. You're done.
Right.
Either you just know you've lost the argument at that point.
Mm-hmm. And whenever it says down here, failure would be no. So I think if you fail a roll, we're going to get into some details here. Mm-hmm. But, when you fail a roll, you take 2 strain, don't you? Is that what that is?
You could take strain equal to the number of uncanceled successes if it's more, or failure. Excuse me, the number of failures above and beyond the canceled successes if it's more than 2.
Gotcha. Okay.
So let's say your net ended up being 4 failures on a roll. You're going to take 4 strain.
Yes.
But if it's only 1, you're still taking 2 strain from a failed check.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's cool. And and there is a so if you want to are these encounters one-on-one, or could how would I affect a group of people? Like if I want to go to a street corner, maybe I'm in some sort of grim and dark fantasy setting, and I'm an agitator. I just want to go to the square and just start going, the mayor sucks, and he shouldn't be sending our boys to war. Maybe I'm a really old man, as I'm saying this. How would I do that, man?
Well, on page 120, table 1.7-1, difficulties based on group size. Yep. As a GM, you're going to reference this. Obviously, the more people, the more difficult they are to sway to your direction. And it also mentions down below that you should feel free to use story points and setback dice based on the crowd's disposition towards you or how unlikely they are to be receptive, period.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if they're, if we go back to my example, more in more of a fantasy setting, if I'm a dwarf that stands up in the middle of like some elven village and goes, elves suck, they should be in the mines with us, they probably want to throw some setback.
Maybe an upgrade to that.
Yeah, well, automatic upgrade. That's true.
You rolled despair, you're taking an arrow. I'm just saying.
Oh, so there we go, back to round 0 of the combat encounter.
Yep. And then also in this section we have a really handy chart on page 121. It's 2 of them, actually. It's 1.7-2 and -3, which is spending advantage and triumphs in social encounters and spending threat and despair in social encounters. And these are real handy guidelines to help GMs and players. What do I do with that extra 3 advantage that I had at the end of that? How do I use it? In combat, hey, 3 advantage, I activate a crit.
Exactly.
But a social encounter, I don't know what I'm going to do with that 3 advantage. Mm-hmm.
I could still activate a crit, to be honest.
Oh, you can?
Yes, I can.
Oh.
And on page 123, in the sidebar, says critical remarks. I'm going to have a critical remark. Like, if, by the way, I could spend that, 4 advantage. I could spend that triumph to get a critical information or a particularly good, like, powerful argument. Or maybe it's a yo mama joke they didn't hear. Have never heard. or
Right.
something along those lines, or a good point, a profound point in the argument. You know what I mean? That's something you can use that for, and they're called critical remarks.
But there's no critical injury chart for social encounters that you roll percentile dice and determine what cool crit they give them. So what do you do?
No, you're just gonna take 5 strain.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Words hurt. Like
Yeah,
you
they
said.
do.
That's right. Words can hurt too, man. The name of our episode.
All right. Well, and then the last section of the social encounter section, this little 2-page section here, is really a good nugget. I love this part. Page 123, using motivations in social encounters.
So what were motivations again there, Tony? Let's refresh us.
So during character creation, you're going to have your 4 motivations: your strength and your flaw and your desire and your fear. Every character has them. Not all NPCs have them, but
Correct.
some will. And there's a tip on page 124 telling you as a GM that maybe your minions shouldn't have motivations, but minor characters that are rivals, maybe a strength and a flaw only.
Yep.
And then your major NPCs, you should give them all 4.
Yeah.
And there's
those
nothing.
Guys, those guys that they're going to be seen again. Your recurring bad guys. Yep.
And it even mentions there's nothing wrong with improvising their motivations on the fly.
Oh, yep, absolutely. And what's really cool about this is you can spend your advantage and your triumph, like we were saying, to either do those critical remarks, but you can also spend those on learning those strengths and flaws of your opponents and pulling on those during the course of the social encounter.
Yeah, let's say you don't know what your social opponent's flaw is, and say you approach them and you mention their flaw. How would you apply it, or you're using it even though you're not knowing it in a negative light?
Yep.
How would you apply that?
Well, and your strength and flaws are one level, kind of a minor level of your motivation, but your fear and the desires are more of your major, think of them as a major and minor axis. If you're pulling on somebody's flaw and you don't even know it, and you're kind of using it in the wrong way, you're going to be taking a setback die. They suggest increasing or decreasing your chances to make these people happy when you're talking to them. So if you're pulling on a strength or a flaw in a good way or a bad way, you'll want to use either one boost or one setback die. If you're using it in a bad way, you want to add a setback die to your next check.
Okay. And then likewise with the desires and the fears, those being stronger if you're using one of those in a positive way, whether you're trying to dissuade their fear or encourage their desire, then you're going to get 2 boost dice. And if you're trying to hinder their desire or fuel their fears, then you're going to get setback dice in your check, 2 of them.
Yep.
And then the last part here in that whole section, there's a couple examples. It's a real good, like I said, real good section for GMs. But there's this last little note here, discerning other people's motivations. Chris mentioned it, that you can find it on that chart, that's how you would spend some advantage or threat to on those finding those things out. However, if your character decide they want to study their opponent beforehand to maybe figure that out, there's a roll you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You would have a good suggestion here is your GM could allow them to make an opposed perception versus cool check. And number of successes and advantage would then come into play here. What do you learn?
Exactly. And you would probably want this player or this character to be in the background over the course of maybe a couple of these quote-unquote rounds of your social encounter before they make this check. So they may have been studying them up to the point, and maybe beforehand. Maybe they did some work beforehand, and maybe they get that. That's something too. That's some way of doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you're doing your investigation on these people, that's one thing you want to think about as players here. Maybe you want to learn your strengths and desires, or strengths and flaws, or fears of your opponents before you approach them. For instance, as preparation to go talk to those crime families, right? As in the example we gave earlier.
Well, I'll use an example from my Star Wars game that I run for you guys. When you guys went to meet your contact on Coruscant, you wanted to learn what motivates him before you even left. So somebody ran a slicing check, to ran a background check on the guy, and figure out what he's into, what he likes, what he doesn't like, what his desires and flaws are. Exactly. And that certain player happened to roll a shitload of triumph.
Yes, I did. And to be totally honest with you, completely forgot that was a social encounter, that you were using it like that. It felt so seamless when you were doing it. It was pretty good. It was really
and that's
good.
just it. You do not have to announce that you're running a social encounter for your players. If you just want to just ask for the roles that you think are appropriate, that put them in that situation, you can run this seamlessly to the point where they don't even notice that they're in a social encounter where strain is being dealt to the enemy and not the enemy, but the NPC, to try and get them to bend to your will and do things your way.
And you can, as a GM, you may want to keep track and know what your players, what the characters, the PCs thresholds are, strain thresholds are, so you can maybe keep track of that behind the scenes in something like this. Now, there is something that we don't have written on here, so I'm going to do kind of a little, what do we call that, a sidebar? I don't know.
Sidebar, audible.
Audible, yeah. I'm going to call an audible that just popped in my head as we're talking about this.
Go ahead.
There is a fine line as a GM, DM, judge, call it what you will, over the years of, you never want to take control of a player character, of one of your players' characters, right? Mm-hmm. You want to let them know, hey, you need to kind of start capitulating here because you're taking strain, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they may resist. No, I don't agree. My character will never agree to something like that. How would you handle that, Tony? I know this is kind of an audible, putting you on the spot here, but it was just something that came in my mind.
Well, is at one point you have to determine whether this is a player motivation or a character motivation. Is the player just not wanting to lose, or is it the character that's that stubborn? And maybe in that case, you've got that stubborn character that's going to argue until the point of everybody else in the room kind of tells him to shut the hell up.
Yeah. Yeah, but that could be a whole entire episode talking about difficult players and how to run a difficult, when a game kind of gets out of control, that kind of stuff. But right, just keep in mind out there, you want to set the tone here and try and get buy-in from your players. I think more than anything, it's kind of that, right?
Yeah, you and I have rolled plenty of games over the years, and a character, I don't care what D20 game you're running, they roll a 1, they know they failed. Okay, and they can accept that. You just kind of got to convince them that when that strain threshold hits 0 on your character sheet,
well, sometimes it is. It gets shit, man. When you're
on your character sheet.
Yep.
When that strain threshold hits 0, you failed.
It's like as if rolling a 1 or whatever in another D20 game.
And then let them determine how they failed. If you've got that obstinate player, okay, you failed. Now tell me how you failed. And maybe you got so upset that they just stomped out of the room. Or, maybe they, this guy has berated me, and I back and forth, and I lost, and I lose my temper, and we start combat round 1 instead of combat round 0.
There's that. there is that.
Whatever
one way of
works
doing it,
for your situation, for your players, for you as a GM. Just, I hate to say it, have an adult conversation.
It is, yeah, and we've had these, and we've had those moments in our games where we're where they're trying to negotiate to get a good price of things, and that's one way. That's one social encounter type there. So I encourage you to use them because I don't know, it's fun. It's fun. It's a pretty decent system here.
Okay.
So I think let's run through a social combat or a social encounter here, dude.
Yep. So normally, part 2 of our main section would be where we do the setting the tone for our settings. But in this case, we don't run social encounters any different than the book for either of our settings, and I don't think there is any reason to do so for any setting. So we've got a new part 2. Instead of setting the tone, what is it called?
It's called Fight Club. So we're going to talk about Fight Club next.
All right. So in this little section here, we run through an encounter, and we've chosen for me to run Chris, and Chris is going to take the role of several players in the party through a social combat encounter or a social encounter. So let's give you a little setup here. This is in my setting, Hellgate. There is 3 players in the party. There is a female Templar, a male Kabbalist, which is a wizard type, and a male hunter, which is your government spy type. These 3 characters are trying to convince a smuggler who has his own fishing trawler type boat to take them out to a privately owned man-made island where there's supposedly a secret facility where the demons have caught wind of that has something that they want, and these players need to get out there and stop the demons. So we're going to run through the social encounter of trying to convince a smuggler who doesn't want to take his boat out on the water during the daytime because the demons might be out, and he doesn't have high-tech weaponry. He doesn't have magic. He doesn't have the holy word of light behind him to protect him. So why would he take his boat out during the daytime to risk his own neck? So in this case, a brief social encounter. So I've got the NPC, a smuggler, is an old Irishman ship captain named Paddy.
Nice.
And
it being like the day after St. Patrick's Day has nothing to do with that.
Shush. So old Paddy here, he smells the fish guts, and he's sitting in his office, or in his little, not really an office, it's kind of an under-wharf hovel he's got that he hides in. He's got his boat tied up, but it's covered in debris to look like it's a crashed boat nearby. And so your 3 characters in your group have been led here by a bum you found down the street in a previous social encounter who told you about Paddy, who occasionally will smuggle people out on his boat at night.
At night, but we need to go out there during the day.
Yep.
Alrighty then. Let's see. Who's going to take lead on this first? Well, you know what? I'm going to have my female Templar take lead first.
Okay.
Going to try and charm him. She, so we learned that about the guy. I'm thinking maybe we swing by we bring a bottle of booze for him.
Okay. All right.
And she's going to kind of lead off with that and kind of come in here, throwing around the Templar charm. So
Okay.
For the light and for the good of for the church, you need to take us out. We need to go out to this island. There's a threat that is coming that will be coming that we need to look into and take down, and you need to help us out.
So in this case, as your GM, I would probably give you a boost die for the bottle of booze, because, well, booze is probably pretty rare in the post-apocalyptic world where demons control everything. So fresh food or booze or anything like that is a commodity that is rare.
All right.
But in this case, I think we'll probably just set all of the skill ratings at, because I didn't discuss that with you in advance, but maybe everybody has an ability score of 3 and a 1 skill rank in the appropriate skill.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So in this case, you're trying to charm Patty.
Yes.
And he has a cool of 1.
Okay.
And cool just happens to be presence-based. So the difficulty for you is going to be 3, and one of those is going to be red.
Okay, so 1 red, 2 purple.
Yep.
All right. And
That indicates because of his 3 presence and his 1 rank in cool.
Okay. So I didn't learn really anything about a strength or a flaw or a fear or desire quite yet, but I'm I'm trying to bank on the that whole bringing in some booze with my boost die that I have there.
Yep.
So
and honestly, I'm going to give you made your character very attractive in this situation. She's pretty, very pretty. Okay. And he's a lonely old man, so I'll give you another blue boost die for that.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Since you're being charming.
Well, that should be pretty good to start with.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're good there. All right. Any setback die, or we're good for me to roll?
As of right now, none. Nope.
All right. Okay. I got... Wow. All right. Cancel that. Cancel that. All right. So I got 3 successes and 1 advantage.
Okay.
On that roll.
So what do you want to do with your 1 advantage? First of all, 3 successes means that you're going to immediately do 3 strain to Patty. You've worn him down some. He likes you, and he likes the fact that you brought him booze. So that will take his, in this case, Patty being a rival, his wound threshold, because he doesn't have a separate strain threshold. It's going to take his wound threshold from 12 down to 9.
Okay.
So, and that doesn't actually mean wounds. He's not going to die at the end of this encounter. It's just that minion groups and rivals don't have a separate strain pool.
Okay.
They strain and wounds are dealt to the same pool.
Cool. I would like to use that advantage, taking something off of these charts. I actually like this first thing. I'd like to notice a single important point in this encounter.
Okay. Patty has a picture on the wall of his little hovel of him and a little girl. And it looks rather recent.
Looks rather recent. Is it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
As if it was taken probably before the demons, right before the demons invaded.
Ah.
So that the child in the picture appears to be 8 or 9, probably would only be a few years older than that now.
Okay. If they're still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I am going to, my hunter spots this.
Okay.
And he is going to use the fact that he himself has a daughter that's about the same age, and he notices. We're going to point out the picture in the shack here, and
well, I know that character's backstory as a GM, so I'm immediately going to go, bullshit. You don't have a daughter. That's deception.
Exactly, it is. And he's going to try and I'd like to pull on that string a bit and say that, and maybe ask about, notice the picture on the wall and ask him about, who that is.
Okay. Well, in this case, you are kind of, I have a motivation written down for the guy. Okay. And a desire and a flaw. I actually wrote all 4 for him. In this case, you're hitting on his big fear, and you're hitting it in a positive way. Okay. So you're gonna get 2 boost dice. You don't know this. I would just normally say you're gonna get 2 boost dice.
Okay.
But since we're doing this for the internet to hear, I'm going to explain that out loud. As GM, normally though, if the players don't know it, you just say, "All right, 2 boost dice for that."
Cool. That sounds good. Yeah, so I'm just going to keep on that path to try and get him to take us out there. It's important that we get out there. I want to get back to my little girl, that kind of stuff, right? And if I do this, then I can get back there to her. Okay. So this would be going against his. So deception will go against his vigilance. Mm-hmm. What does he have for vigilance there? Or his willpower? 2, maybe, at least?
He has a willpower of 2 and a vigilance of 1, so it's going to be 2 dice, and one of them will be red.
Okay. All right. And I think I'm going to use. I'd like to use a story point, but I want to try and figure out how I can use it to upgrade this. I think by the fact that I'm saying I want to get back to my little girl, that she might be still alive, his may have passed away. I don't know. Hits it in a positive way, Okay. It'd be more effective to it. So I'm going to upgrade that. One of those. All right. And how about you?
I'm not doing anything. That's good.
Not going to do anything? Okay. So rolling on the good book of Genesis. All righty. Well then, I've got some blanks.
All right.
One of the blue dice comes up blank. The red comes up blank. One of my yellow comes up blank. And I actually fail this check, to be honest, with 1 advantage. So I'm going to take some strain. My hunter is going to take some strain here.
You're going to take 2 strain as Patty immediately gets on the defensive. Hey, don't you be bringing up me daughter. Don't you do that. That's underhanded. I don't care if you got one. Don't you talk about mine.
Okay, so then I think at this point, he's kind of on the defensive, bringing up the daughter thing, and I believe, and I think the Kabbalist here, not sure what the name is, we're gonna maybe, Nicholas, Nick, okay. They call him Nick. He's just basically gonna put his fist down, and he's gonna use. Now I don't know. You say that he's got demon grafts on his skin. I think he's gonna kind of put a fist down that has has some of the demon grafts on it, and go, "Hey, look. Whether he's got a daughter or not." Whatever. I mean, whatever about your daughter. We need to get out there now. And he's a little older. You could probably call him old man. So I'm going to put it down there and maybe try and threaten some violence here. Try and coerce him and scare him with the demon grafts.
All right. Well,
if you don't take us out there, maybe you will look like this, and the demon grafts. I don't know how people react to that in this setting. So.
Well, yeah, a lot of times coercion really works when you emphasize those parts. You found that out in the past. And it does stroke his desire to see the demons gone in a positive light. Even though you're threatening him because you need to do this. This is something that you have to do because you mentioned that. So I'm going to go ahead and give you 2 boost dice there.
Cool.
But the fear of his daughter being left unattended.
Right.
Because what you don't know is that his daughter is alive, but she's special. Okay. And so he is the only person who can take care of her. She can't take care of herself.
Gotcha. Maybe I spend that advantage I got in the last one to kind of learn that a little more.
So, yeah, you kind of maybe looked at the picture a little better. But either way, because you're, never mind the daughter. The daughter's not important. No, to him she is. I'm going to provide also 2 setback dice.
Oh crap. All right. And then what is it? So he had 2 for a willpower. And what would his discipline? I think it's versus discipline, right?
Yeah.
Versus discipline.
Yep. And in this case, his discipline, he does not have any ranks in. So it's just 2 purple.
Okay.
So you have your skill roll, which is 2 green and a yellow, and you have 2 blue, 2 black.
2 blue, 2 black, and then 2 purple. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right, here we go. We're gonna roll this sucker. Okay. We're gonna cancel those. Cancel those. All right. Better. Ooh. Pretty good. All right. So I got 2 successes. 3 advantage.
Okay.
On this. And, yeah. On that roll.
So that takes his wound threshold down from 9. It goes down to 7. He's almost at half. You figure you might be able to get a compromise out of him if you get him to half.
Okay.
Or you can push for you're just going to do what we want. With your 3 advantage, you have determined, okay, you hit a nerve with the fact that the daughter thing is very important to him. That is his biggest fear, is losing her, not being able to take care of her. That is his fear. All 3 of your characters in your party are going to know that intrinsically now.
Gotcha.
And just from the picture, you're going to see that now that you've looked at the picture, it's because she has Down syndrome.
Okay.
That he can't leave her alone. And even though it's been 10 years since that picture was taken, she's 18. She's still not someone he can leave.
Correct. Okay. So I think at this point, knowing that now, my Templar is going to come back, going to get into mommy mode a little bit since she's and go over to him, put her hand on his shoulder, and go, look. I'm going to call back to the temple. I'm going to send a couple people over to get your daughter, take her back to the temple. She'll be protected. She'll be okay. She'll be watched over while you take us out here. We have to get this done. We have to do this.
Okay.
Come on, Patty.
All right. So a charm, another charm roll, which is going to be 2 purple and a red. And I'm
going to flip over a story point to increase it for just that reason. There will be people come over to take his daughter or whatever, right?
Okay. Right.
That's the story. I'm using the story point for that. All right.
Right. And honestly, I think the 3 advantage, it was just 2 to really get key into that. I think you're probably going to get a free boost die just because of your previous roll, the scare tactic from the Kabbalist.
Yep.
Now, because you're using his fear in a positive light, you're going to go ahead and get 2 more blue dice.
Cool.
And you've kind of hit on another one of his things, and that is his strength. His strength is that he is he's this rugged out man who wants to help people, who wants to get back out there and fight back against the demons. He just can't because of her.
Okay.
So I'll give you another one for that strength that you're hitting on. Normally I would just say you get another blue die, and I wouldn't tell you why.
But that's why. So I'm sitting with 4 blue, 2 yellow, a green, and I believe from before it's 1 red, 2 purple.
Correct.
All right. How's that sound?
Go right ahead.
Okay, let's see what we got here then. All right. Well, if I could roll better, it would be good. But all right, so let's see. Let's cancel those. cancel that. Dude, this sucks because I failed with 3 advantage.
Okay, so he's basically so attracted to the female Templar that in typical male fashion, all the words that are coming out of her mouth are going in one ear and out the other. He didn't hear a word you said. The promise to take care of his kid. He's just watching you move and looking at you lasciviously.
Okay.
In the case of that female Templar, he's not really
responding too much?
Nope. In fact, it could be that another aspect of his personality is coming into play.
Which is, I'll spend my I'll spend my 3 advantage or 2 advantage to know this.
His flaw is that he is an old pervert. And not only an old pervert, but a bit of a chauvinist.
Oh.
So, you're purdy, you shouldn't be talking.
Okay, then. Well, then we're gonna. So, okay, then we'll have the we'll have our spy here take over again. Coercion worked, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to continue with this lie of the deception and say that my daughter is already at the temple. Your daughter will be well taken care of, and will be just fine. And my daughter will be able to, take care of her, and she'll have a new friend.
Okay. All right.
So, deceiving again.
All right. Go ahead. I will provide the same amount of boost dice as before, so grand total of 4.
Gotcha. Alrighty. And that's 1 red, 1 purple, right? For that, right. I believe.
But as your GM,
yeah,
old Patty, he's got his eye set on that pretty Templar.
Yep.
And he's gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and flip a story point.
Oh, man.
Because he already has an idea of how he might compromise.
Oh boy! All right, good thing I have that thing at the beginning of the show, just in case, right? All right, here we go. Okay. So, all right, this is much better. All those blue dice help, dude.
There you go.
All right, so I got 4 successes. And 5 advantage.
All right, yes. 4 successes pushes him down to only 3 strain left. He is willing to compromise. And how many advantage?
6.
All right. Wow. So, what you could do with 5 advantage? Maybe a remark? Maybe a critical remark?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
you shut him down immediately because you notice what he's looking at. Maybe.
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna pretty much shut him down. Some sort of critical remark about him being a pervert.
Okay. Well, yeah. He eventually, once he realizes that you caught on to what he was starting to think about, he immediately. Oh no, that's not what I was thinking. Oh, you're all wrong. Listen, I'll take you out, and we'll go immediately. Just let me pack me bags and let me say goodbye to my daughter.
All right, and at that point, the temple guards show up and take his daughter and such, right?
Right.
All right.
So that's our sample social encounter. It was brief. It was kind of cheesy, but hey, it covers the base.
Yep, and that's kind of how that's how you do it.
Yep.
And that was our first Fight Club.
Yeah.
Now remember, everybody out there, first rule Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. But you can talk about finding a narrative.
Yeah, feel free. So, yeah, that's it for social encounters for today, man. We've pretty much covered everything there is to talk about when it comes to running a social encounter. If you have any questions, again, bottom of the show, we'll put out our contact information. Get a hold of us. Yep. Chris and I will gladly answer them, or I will gladly answer them in the case of Facebook and pass it on to Chris.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, and if we did miss something, let us know as well.
Yep. And we're not the only experts out there, and I'm sure we're not real experts.
No, but that was pretty fun. I like that. I like that scenario. That was pretty cool.
Okay.
All right, man. So let's get on to our favorite one. What is it? What?
Advantageous threats.
All right. All right, here we are. We are back with part 3, Advantageous Threats. Okay, so this time, my character, I'm going to go first this time.
Okay.
So my character, he's, let me think, we're gonna say that it's, we're setting this in New York City. Around the 20s, 30s, probably Prohibition era. Something like that, right?
Okay.
I got this guy named Nicky Four Fingers. He's a made man. He wants to figure out. He's heard of this poker game that's being run on his turf, and he needs to figure out where this game is. And like I said, it's New York City. It's January. It's cold, but Nick here needs to turn up the heat. So on somebody. So I'm thinking that his main social skill here is going to be coercion. He beats down people. He's just going to go somewhere in his on his turf somewhere. Maybe somebody he has a protection racket that he's working. He's going to go try and get some information, see if somebody's heard of this poker game.
Well, let's say you probably would know about the runner.
Okay.
Yep, they call him Tommy Two Steps.
Tommy Two Steps.
He runs information back and forth, handheld, little notes from place to place. He has a tendency to read those notes now and again when he's not supposed to.
All right.
You know this about Tommy because you've dealt with Tommy before.
Oh yeah.
So you immediately know his flaw.
Oh, sweet.
From a previous encounter, basically.
All right. Good. All right, so flaw, that's kind of a minor motivation. So I'm going to at least get a boost die for that. And I'm thinking because Nicky here, or Nick, Mr. Four Fingers here, is a made man. He's got a pretty good willpower. I'm thinking it's going to be at least a 3.
Okay.
But his coercion is going to be 2. He's grown up on the streets. He's tough. And he does use coercion.
Okay. Well, Tommy, being that he's run the streets quite a bit,
yep.
he isn't the most willful of people. He's, a follower. So he's only got a 2 willpower.
All right.
But he's used to following in line with what the bosses always say.
Cool.
So, he's got 2 ranks in discipline.
Ooh, so 2 reds there. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right.
And, yeah, the made man thing, definitely. Give yourself another boost die for that. Okay. That's immediately going to intimidate Tommy, because he's used to dealing with made men, and they usually get their way.
Yeah. And they don't call Nicky Four Fingers for nothing. He's going to put that 4-fingered hand on Tommy's shoulder for maybe another boost die. Or maybe to activate a talent that... What was that talent? I didn't pick it for him, but he does have it. I don't know if they put it in... Remember, there was one in Star Wars, the Star Wars game, where you can reduce... You could spend strain or something to reduce the difficulty. But that's okay. He doesn't have it. It's all good.
But let's say from before that you have a battle scar.
Oh, which is the finger. There you go.
That gives the battle scar from before, which is the finger, which gives you boost die and coercion checks.
Oh, there we go. That's perfect. That's kind of what I was looking for anyway. All right, cool.
Well, since our last session we talked about battle scars, I'm like, hey, there we go.
That's right. Nicky Four Fingers got his finger shot off. The last little thing before. Alrighty. So, how's that look? I have 2 yellow, a green, 3 blue versus 2 red.
One last. I'm going to give you a black die because what you don't know.
All right. So what I don't know, I don't know. That sounds good to me. All right, here we go. We're going to roll this again on the Good Book of Genesis. Let's see what we got. Dude, did not roll a setback, or a despair, I should say. But what I did... so whatever I don't know because it came up blank. Regardless. Okay. But I got a lot of advantage. 1 success, though. And 1 success and 6 advantage on that roll.
Okay. Well, in this case, you were only making a simple check. This was not going to be a full encounter. Right. This is a simple check. You just want 1 nugget of information. You're not trying to get him to do... What he tells you is that Giacomo, another made man, is running the poker game.
What?
And he's running it out of his mother's basement. And the reason why you had the black die is because it was versus another made man who made him swear that he wasn't going to tell anybody about the poker game.
Nice.
So it didn't come into play because he's more afraid of you than he is of Gio.
All right. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to try and take maybe 3 or 4 of these advantage to intercept a pizza. They're going to be delivering. They're going to be getting delivery, some pasta or pizza delivered, and I know where it's coming. I'm intercepting it, and I'm going to show up.
Excellent. So you know the time the pizza's going, or let's say they're getting pasta delivered because that sounds appropriate.
They're getting
from a local restaurant. They got to. In fact, your runner here is on a run to go get it.
Nice.
And he's supposed to come back with it, and he's supposed to knock on the door a certain way, and you know all that now.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.
So that was it, and then maybe next time we'll go through the round 1 of that combat encounter, right?
You walk in with your Tommy gun. Here we go.
That's right. Nice.
All right. So for mine, I dug back to my old D&D days and rewrote a D&D encounter that I had way back when I ran 2nd edition or played. So my dwarven paladin named Phoenix Thunderhelm is leading a squad of elite dwarven warriors known as the Hammers of Clangadin into battle against a tribe of hobgoblin raiders in the tunnels of our mountain complex. The hobgoblins have us pinned in. Behind us, they have a collapsed tunnel. And behind them is a hidden door that we can use to escape. And I must rally my troops to push them so we can flank the dragon all my friends are fighting in the main cavern.
Alrighty then.
So, this is obviously a leadership check.
It sure is.
And I need to get these troops rallied. A single check to inspire them to charge through the hobgoblins, get through that secret door, and get to the main complex to fight a dragon.
All right. Well, how many Hammers of Clangadin do you have in your group here?
5.
5?
Yeah. I do believe.
Right. So that will be an average check. So that's 2 to 5 number of targets. So you want to hit them all. That's
then there's 6 of them. I want a hard check.
You want a hard check. So well, you know what? Let's just make it a nice round 10 of these guys. You got almost a dwarven baker's dozen. Sorry, a dwarven blacksmith dozen.
There you go. The blacksmith dozen. 10 of them.
10 of them. That's right. So that's going to be a hard check.
Okay. All right. So being a dwarf, I don't have the highest presence.
No.
In fact, it's a 2.
It is a 2.
But because I'm a paladin, I have put some points in leadership. And so I am sitting at 3 ranks in leadership.
Nice.
So in this case, I am getting the 3 dice. Yep. Getting the 3 dice from my skill
from your
and
my ranks. Yep.
and my upgraded dice, the 2 that become proficiency, are from the attribute.
Cool.
So 2 yellow and green, 3 purple as of right now.
Right.
Now,
and you know what? I am going to give you a boost die here, maybe even 2, because, dude, they're in your home.
Yep.
They're hobgoblins and they're in your home. Take 2 boost die.
Okay.
To that.
All right. But I know there's a but here somewhere.
Well, of course there's a but here. These hobgoblins have you outnumbered like 4-1.
Holy crap.
And you're just
40 of them.
You're just gonna wedge through them and go. So
okay.
I'm gonna make that a two setback die.
Okay.
To that, because you guys are like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm. All right. And there's a dragon on the other side too.
And that was going to be my story point flip to justify it flipping one of those to a red, bud.
All right.
Because ultimately you're going to go through all of these hobgoblins, but you're going to be fighting a dragon afterwards. So.
All right, sounds good.
Let's see what we got.
So I roll this up, and first thing I notice is that my red die came up blank, thankfully. Yay! No despair for you this week, buddy. All right, so I had 3 successes total and 2 failures, so that comes out to 1 success.
Okay.
And 4 advantage is my net.
4 advantage.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you're definitely going to you succeed in like rallying the elite hammers of Clangeddon for sure.
And for my 4 advantage, what I'd like to do is when we go to charge the hobgoblins, we are going to catch them by surprise. And our first foray into their ranks is going to be upgraded. Absolutely.
That sounds very good to me. Now, in this case, we might want to use some mass combat rules. I don't think they have anything for that in here in Genesis, do they?
No, but we could pull that over from Star Wars if we needed to.
We could. And it could just be maybe another check or 2 to kind of get that wedge of dwarves through the hobgoblins. So whatever that check would be, the next one would be upgraded. I like it. I like it a lot.
All right. Well, that was Advantageous Threats.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was good. I like that one, too. Pretty cool. All right, we're ready to wrap this show up then?
Yeah, let's do that, man.
All right.
All right, so that's our show, folks. You got a podcast in the network, in the Nerds International Network you want to shout out to, Chris?
Yes, I do. I wanna shout out to those twats. Those tabletop twats.
That's tabletop twats.
Twats? Is it is that twats?
I don't know.
I don't know. They're from overseas. They're over the other way. So the tabletop twats are it's a podcast. It's a tabletop RPG podcast all about RPGs, starring 3 Brits. Nick, who has his very own beard. Congratulations,
really?
Nick. Harrison, who is part shark, part maid. Not sure what that means. And James, who is half gourd, all Asian. So they're, I think it looks like they just dropped episode 33 called The Savage Worlds of Solemn Man Kane. And on part 5 of they're doing a DCC Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG actual play called The Foreign Beggars. And they're out on SoundCloud, http://soundcloud.com/tabletop-twats, TWATS. They're on G+, Facebook, iTunes, Podbean. So yeah, go check
on Facebook, they had to become the tabletop T because, Facebook wouldn't let them use the other word.
What?
Yeah. But yep, I've been a listener to their show for a long time, Patreon subscriber. And so the one thing you mentioned, their foreign beggars thing, for their Patreon subscribers, they have used all of their Patreon subscribers' names as parts of that foreign beggars campaign as either NPCs, or in the case of the city that they're from is Fanning City.
Oh, Mr. Fanning. That is so cool, dude.
It's a lot of fun to listen to. You guys should give it a listen.
Yep. Yeah, man. Yeah, so go check that out, everybody.
Yep. And so contact us. That's me and Chris at findingthenarrativepodcast@gmail.com. You can get a hold of us at Finding the Narrative on Facebook. Well, get a hold of me, and I'll pass it on. Finding the Narrative in the Nerds International Network on G+. That's with a hyphen, Nerds hyphen International.
Yep.
And you listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts that you love so much.
That's right.
So thanks for listening, folks. It will be a bit of a break here as I move to my new home between episodes, but hopefully we won't be off for too long. Hopefully just a couple, maybe an extra week or so.
Sounds good.
But until then, this is Tony saying, keep rolling them bones.
And this is Chris saying, remember the rule of cool and just have fun, everyone. Night-night.
Night, everybody.
Finding a Narrative Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of Finding a Narrative Podcast. Copyright 2018, all rights reserved.